Hi. Some of y'all, if y'all have been having a bunny ear teacher in your school before, might know me by a few different names, but I tend to go, I've been called the bunny ear teacher, the rainbow teacher, bibliophilic intro cat, as you can see on this video. I have autism and ADHD, and one thing I got to do at my last teaching job that sometimes at different teaching jobs it's hard to squeeze in because the school doesn't automatically build it in, is read with my students. And when you do a once a week thing, sometimes it doesn't work out as much, especially if parents are forcing kids to look at it and stuff like that. But I know there's a way to do this from my experience, because I know if any of y'all are watching, my friends in my first class in 23-24 gotten so into pointing out when they see vocab and things like that, even when I'm not asking. And I will include vocab in the description below if you would like to study it yourself and see if you can learn it. My parents have asked me, the parents of my students have asked me, "This is such crazy vocab here, it's like college." And I'm like, no, all I did was take a book like Holes or Harry Potter and say, hey, tell the internet, give me a list for this book for kids who are, in my case, because of the school I was at, third graders who learn fifth grade stuff. And these weren't kids learning it because they were advanced kids automatically. Some of them were, because naturally in any school, some of them are going to be those kids who just naturally, the normal level is too hard for them, so they're up here. But even kids who would normally just follow the normal path and do it the same way, we're doing it too, and we're learning it all the way around. So my kids ended up learning things like what triskaidekaphobia means. You know, your root words and such, it's morphemes. Fear of the number 13. I learned that myself from Dustin Hoffman and Mr. McGorham's Wonder Emporium, from our friend who also gave us The Rise of the Guardians, which my kids are very familiar with on a more intimate level, and Roly Poly Oly for those of you older people who watched Disney back in the early 2000s, and things of that nature. So I wanted a way to get this bit, especially since I'm now living with me and my cat, Sherlock, who my students have heard about. He may or may not jump around and meow or do something now and then. And in the background, you kind of got poorly positioned because that's just how it's going to be. I got to, with my autistic self, find a place that I like the best. And things, you'll get different angles sometimes. Sometimes maybe I'll have it where you can see my books, things like that. But for now, you get Fruits Basket, the most recent iteration where they actually finish out the story in the anime, and kind of hidden away over here, Bluey. Very similar color patterns, and both very chill until the moment when it's not, but also just relaxing in their essence. So I am going to start off. I'm going to see what I can do, since it's kind of like a book club of sorts with books that are less public domain. But I'm going to start off, especially because I have such a pretty copy. These illustrated copies by 7 Seas are amazing. There's still some I need to get. But I have one on basic fairy tales, which my students also are familiar with because of a beautiful series called Tale Dark and Grim, which now has a Netflix show as of last year. Pride and Prejudice, Wizard of Oz, and The Secret Garden, which is Matilda's favorite children's book after all. So let's get into the first chapter. And I will show you the pictures, because this one does have pictures, both non-colored ones inside, which is why it's called illustrated, and but it has the full story either way, and in the beginning. Actually, I'll start off. Here's our front cover, Alice and the cat and such, and her little friends. In the back, I'll read that to you in a moment, as well as, let's see, there's those again, and you turn into the front, and then with the rabbit and our friend Alice. Ditto. Oh, you gotta love the falling part. Oh, get some Hatter. Because this one also has both the original and the sequel. So this is seriously her Adventures in Wonderland, because it goes Through the Looking Glass as well. If anybody saw the, I guess it was straight to DVD. I gotta look up who it's by. Version of the Through the Looking Glass. That was amazing. I had on VHS, I think, at some point as a kid at my grandparents' house with my parents, them and me, my brother and my pets. So that was amazing, even if it didn't get the Disney treatment for that bit. Okay, until, of course, the live action set that they had with Tim Burton. Okay, so let us get started. It's illustrated by Chris Sison, and here is how it describes it on the back. Curiouser and curiouser, re-experience Lewis Carroll's original Alice novels with gorgeous manga-style artwork. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass is a collection of stories featuring the titular character Alice and her misadventures through curious and fantastical lands of Wonderland. As little Alice goes deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, she meets an assortment of oddball characters like the eccentric March Hare, the whimsical Mad Hatter, and the enigmatic Cheshire Cat, who will all become familiar faces within this strange world. If Alice is to navigate dangerous yet fascinating landscape of Wonderland, she must learn who is friend and who is foe, and use her good breeding and wits to find her way home. And I will, time to time, I might be getting into it a little bit at first because I'm still getting the vibe for this, since I don't have actual, students in front of me like I normally do. The last time I read kind of like this was when I was like 10 and I was reading Vera Jack Paul. Amazing books. I need to get my copy because I lost mine when we moved up here to Austin back the year the last Harry Potter book came out, 2007. To my old beautiful cat that's had me for the first for like 14 years of my life or something, 20 something odd years of my life. Dipsy Doodle, named after Teletubby. I knew I had Lala, a Shih Tzu, black and white one that I got as a present opening up. The box jumped out at my grandma Becky's house, and when I was like 3, and there's pictures of it. And I had like a bunch of goldfish named Poe because you know how kids are with goldfish and goldfish are in general. But I knew even then ain't no one deserved, unless they're a fake character, to be called any version of Tinky or Winky. Because just actually talking to a real living being, like, no. Unless you're doing it as a joke with a person you know, no. Anyway, let's get into the actual things, and you'll get used to my way of doing things. It's very, very odd. Otherwise, you just won't be here. That's on you. You won't be in the Rainbow Teachers Book Club. And I also have a website that I will link in the description that includes my magical book list that we will read more than just what's on there and other things, and feel free to get your own copy. These ones you can get for free, both online digital copies and not the illustrated version, but the story itself to follow along as well if you would like. And pause this, get that, and then follow along that way as well. But all reading is good reading, even if like it won't help you with your actual like sounding out skills to not read it yourself, but the actual experience still has significant benefits, which I will get into at some point. But for now, let's go in. It starts off by giving us a poem by Lewis Carroll. All in the golden afternoon. All in the golden afternoon, full leisurely we glide, for both our oars with little skill by little arms are plied, while little hands make vain pretense our wanderings to guide. Ah, cruel 3 in such an hour, beneath such dreamy weather, to beg a tale of breath too weak to stir the tiniest feather. Yet what can one poor voice avail against 3 tongues together? Imperious Prima flashes forth her edict to begin it. In gentler tones, Secunda hopes, where there will he nonsense in it. While Tertia interrupts the tale, not more than once a minute. Anon to sudden silence one, in fancy they pursue, the dream child moving through a land of wonders wild and new, in friendly chat with bird or beast, and half alive believe it true. And ever as the story drained the wells of fancy dry, and faintly strove that weary one to put the subject by. The rest next time, it is next time, the happy voices cried. Thus grew the tale of Wonderland, thus slowly, one by one. Its quaint events were hammered out, and now the tale is done. And home we steer, a merry crew, beneath the setting sun. Alice, a childish story taken with a gentle hand, lay where childhood dreams are twined in memory's mystic band, like pilgrims' withered wreath of flowers plucked in a far-off land. So, from what I can tell, and I would get into this more, but I don't want y'all to think I'm just going to be talking the whole time and not getting enough into the story. That seems to be a beautiful tale of bringing the story to life in existence at all, the tale of Wonderland. So here we go. Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole, which gives us firstly this beautiful picture of Alice and her sister. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what use is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversations? It's funny, we normally think of kids' books as having pictures in it, but you never really think about it. Yeah, part of kids' books, really a lot more in a lot of areas, is if there's not pictures, at the very least, there's a lot of people talking in it. Like when I'm reading my own book that I'm reading at the moment, if this doesn't fall down, A History of Women and 180 Objects, there's not going to be much like people talking to each other. There's just going to be it telling up the facts. And this one, if cats disappear from the world, which is more on the adult end, even though it's not necessarily inappropriate, he lives alone with his cat. So yes, there is conversation, but it's a lot less, unless you're counting internal dialogue of him talking to himself in his mind and such. So yeah, that is an interesting thing, how kids can think sometimes. So she was considering in her own mind as well as she could, for the hot day made her very sleepy and stupid. We all know that. I especially know that. Whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. You know who that is. There was nothing so very remarkable in that. Nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late." When she thought it over afterward, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat and looked at it and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet. Started meaning like you're kind of at a pause because you're sitting still. So when you started, you like kind of jumped. And in this case, she jumped up out of her seat to her feet to run off. For it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take it out of. And burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it and was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment, down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. You know, I think that kind of sounds like the fact that she didn't notice. It's kind of like when you just wake up from a dream or you're in the middle of a dream, you're like, all this weird stuff's happening, like the sky's blue, like there's a shark standing next to you with legs or something, and you're just like, or like your bookshelf has so many books on it that it doesn't even make sense for you, even if you're like a massive book person and they're all falling over, and you're like, that's annoying, but it's not. But then like when you wake up, you're like, wait a minute, oh my God, why is that happening? I apologize if that bothers some of you. I will try to replace that God with some of my weirder words in the future, but I tend to forget sometimes. So apologies. So I think she's kind of having like that moment because she's half asleep. So she's kind of like, when you're in a dream and you're just like, I'm talking to Santa Claus. But then you're like, wait a minute. I'm talking to Santa Claus. Why am I not weirded out by this? He's never visited me in person, like where I get to meet him before. How'd that happen? Why are my feet green or something? Insane. Why do I have a duckbill? In another moment, Down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep well. Either the well was very deep or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well, and noticed they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there, she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. She took a jar from one of the shelves, and as she passed it, it was labeled orange marmalade. But to her great disappointment, it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody underneath. Sounds very Tom and Jerry-like. I can imagine that. So managed to put it into one of the cupboards as she fell past it. And let's look at what marmalade is real quick, because I think it's kind of like you might put butter, peanut butter, jelly, and some kind of spices and stuff on your jam, which is kind of like jelly on your thing, but let's see, Miriam. But marmalade is a little bit different. And I know they definitely use it a lot more in, my apologies, I'm adjusting to some savings issues in some of these. So, let me get back in. So we're talking about what marmalade or jam it is. A clear sweetened jelly in which pieces of fruit and fruit rind are suspended. So it's a type of jelly that's usually clear. So, distinction. So you might have had marmalade before and not realized it. Okay. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which is very likely true. Yeah, for a reason, because you probably wouldn't be getting up very easily after that. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen this time, she said aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. That would be 4,000 miles down, I think. For you see, Alice had learned several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom. And though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still it was good practice to say it over. You know, that's like me telling fun facts to myself all the time in different ways, even when it's just like, what? Nah, I'm still going to say it. To Sherlock, even though he ain't got classes to go to or uses for the information. Yes, that's about the right distance, but then I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got. Alice had not the slightest idea what latitude was or longitude either, but she thought they were nice grand words to say, for sure, because they're not in the middle of the earth, they're about where you are on the top. Pleasantly, she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it'll seem to come out among the people that walk with their heads downward. The antipathies, I think. She was rather glad there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. But I shall have to think about what the name of the country is, you know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Fancy meaning, like, funny to think about, basically. Like, what a thought. And what an ignorant little girl she'll think me for asking. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. I'll get my placement right at some point. Down, down. There was nothing else to do, so Alice began talking again. Dinah will miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dinah was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But they do, well, they call them fowl-necked foxes, is a different thing. And also, cats don't particularly actually prefer milk. Most mammals don't after their babies. We just have kind of forced ourselves, so even many adults can. A lot of adults shouldn't, because they've stopped being able to they start becoming lactose intolerant as soon as they're done being fed by their mothers as babies, which is what happens with cats and dogs and such. And here Alice began to get rather sleepy and went on saying to herself in a dream, so, do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes do bats eat cats? For you see, she couldn't answer either. It didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah and was saying to her very earnestly, now, Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? And then suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over. And again, I apologize for my hair. Born with curly hair, and then I'm just, not good at dealing with it. My mom usually did my hair as a kid because she's got straight hair, but she knows how to deal with curly just off of me. And I'm just not a cosmetic hair person. Oh, Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped on her feet in a moment. She looked up, and it was dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight. Hurrying down it, there was not a moment to lose. Away went Alice like the wind. It was just in time to hear it say, as it turned a corner, oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting. She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all round the hall, but they were all locked, and when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever to get out. Suddenly, she came upon a little three-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it but a tiny golden key. And Alice's first idea was that this might belong to one of the doors of the hall. But alas! Either the locks were too large or the key was too small. But at any rate, it would not open any of them. However, on the second time around, she came upon a low curtain she had not noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her delight, it fitted. Yeah, we definitely, sometimes things change. Like we say fit, she said fitted, we would have said it fit as the past tense. And hopefully my old 3BI friends remember a little bit of how in some of the old fairy tales, how they unlocked some doors and the warning we got from our author, Adam Gidwitz. Good thing she didn't have to follow that method here. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you've ever seen. How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander about among those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains. But she could not even get her head through the door, and even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. You don't really think about it as shutting up, because you think of shutting like a door, like closing or putting a lid on a box, but you kind of do shut it together like you would a closing something when you have a telescope or something, go make it smaller. I think I could if I only knew how to begin. I think some of my kids think I can shut up like a telescope the way I do. And some of the adults probably do too. Yeah. Anyway, back into it. where you see so many out-of-the-way things that happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things indeed were really impossible. You might get that sometimes when you're watching the news or thinking about different things, weird things you see on TV. You're like, I wouldn't think that would happen, but it did. So what am I going to say next? A flying pig? There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. This time she found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not here before, said Alice, and tied around the neck of the bottle was a paper label with the words, "Drink me," beautifully printed on it in large letters. It was very well to say "drink me," but the wise little Alice was not going to do that in a hurry. "No, I'd look first," she said, "and see whether it's marked poison or not." Very good. Me, I have to do something similar, but that's because I'm vegan. And even if I decided to go back, which I wouldn't do, just because for my own moral reasons that I do vegan for, I found out from eating things accidentally that at the very least I would have to go very slowly, and it would probably make me sick, at least at first, because I already had acid reflux and probably IBS and different stomach issues from my family line. And then I'm picky on its own with the autism and some ARFID and different things like that. So, after, 6 or so years, 8 years or so, because 2017. Without it, and humans are already supposed to be done with that when they're done getting fed like an infant. For she had read several nice little stories about children who got burnt or eaten up by wild beasts and other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them. Right, we do that when we're watching movies. Don't go in there! Such as that a red hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. I guess she means like versus a paper cut, where it hurts, but it doesn't. Yeah. And she had never forgotten that if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it's almost certain to disagree with you at some point. And when something disagree with you, that's what she means. Like disagree with somebody. Like if you disagree with somebody, obviously, you might. Even if you're like friendly about it and you're like, that's fine if you like blue and I like pink, or in my case, rainbow or purple. It still is an issue if like one of y'all has to give up something if y'all are picking like what color are we gonna paint these walls or something. One of y'all has to, or both of y'all have to give up something to get a choice made. So disagree in that sense is like when you have a stomach ache or something when it makes you sick. It's kind of like when you get a bad feeling from talking or dealing with somebody to a certain extent, even if it's just a teeny tiny bit. Like, dang it, if we both like purple, we could have painted the walls purple. So that's usually what it means by disagree. Oh, and then here's our little mat thing right here. And there she is. Oh, and then there's her with the door and the key. Almost to the end of the chapter. However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it. Ventured, kind of like adventure. She's trying it. She's like, I'll take a chance. I'll dare to do it. And finding it very nice, it had in fact sort of a mixed flavor of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast. She very much finished it off. I guess they must be kind of a way where almost you're not like you taste them all, but you're not really tasting them mixed together, because I feel like if it was just all blended together, all of that would just be really gross. If y'all want to see something good, look at Gimme Pizza from Mary Kate and Ashley from their sleepover video back in the 90s. They act like they're having the fun time of their life making this pizza. They put things on there that would be weird to begin with, but then they also put it on there all together to big fish and sour cream and whipped topping and like even if any of those were good on their own, kind of like how my brother likes pineapple and a lot of people do, all those together on there. So I'm assuming it's kind of like probably jumping between the flavors. Like, oh, now I taste this. Oh, now I taste that. Now I taste this. Not like all together. Especially me with my food. That's why I can't eat, when I get my smoothies from Tropical Smoothie, everybody knows I swap the banana because I like banana more just when I'm actually eating a banana and not the other. By the way, most of y'all are probably eating them backwards. You're supposed to actually open them from the part that sticks out at the bottom. And also, when you do that, it makes it less likely to smush to the top part like it does when you pull it from the part that hangs. They're also berries, well, strawberries aren't. Anyway, refocus. And like I said, we're almost done. And for cherry tart, I sure like some cherry Pop-Tarts. I'm assuming that's like, cherry Pop-Tart is probably similar to what a cherry tart would be, and it's just like a quick little modern version that we set up for breakfast. What a curious feeling, although mine does not have frosting on it because that has dairy in it, so. What a curious feeling, said Alice. I must be shutting up like a telescope. What a thought. And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high. I like how her idea of apologies. I'm going to go through and delete photos and stuff because I've got them on my phone and I don't need them on here and things of that nature. So, again, we're almost there, so this won't happen again for this bit. And it won't happen on the next video when we're in chapter 2. Okay. What a curious feeling, said Alice. I must be shutting up like a telescope. It's interesting because I would think shutting up like a telescope is kind of like kind of like a umbrella. It's not keeping it. It's not staying the same size. You're not just like when you're on a computer and you shrink a photo. You're doing it like, okay, it's the same thing, and you're just going. I would think it's more like, if you fold yourself in half, like you're going to put yourself in a suitcase, like a shirt or something. Like how an umbrella shuts down, or like, and especially the ones that you can do like a telescope and just so the little bit goes in more. And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and her face brightened up at the thought that she was now the right size for going through the little door into the lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this, for it might end, said Alice to herself, in my going out altogether like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then. And she tried to fancy what the flame of the candle looks like after the candle is blown out, for she could not imagine ever having seen such a thing. After a while, finding that nothing more happened, she decided on going into the garden at once. But alas, for poor Alice, when she got to the door, she found she had forgotten the little golden key. And when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it. She could see it quite plainly through the glass, and she tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table. But it was too slippery, and when she had tired herself out from trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. We all know that feeling. Grown-ups and teachers and stuff, we wish we could do that sometimes, but we can't, and we've got other ways to do it. And find another healthy time to do that. But if it's ever that bad, obviously you talk to somebody around you, say, hey, I need a moment to just actually let this out. Can you help me find a space and a way to do that? Thank you. Let's see. Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself rather sharply. I advise you to leave off this minute. She kind of likes to talk to herself a lot, and in a very teacher way, like she's talking to another person, not just thinking out loud. She generally gave herself very good advice. I'm sure we all think that. Though she very seldom followed it. So she doesn't even listen to herself. And I know we get that sometimes. Like, get up and do the chore before it's too late. And then what happens? And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears into her eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself. For this curious child was very fond of pretending to be two people. But it's no use now, thought poor Alice, to pretend to be two people. Why, there's hardly enough for me to make one respectable person. And by the way, for boxing ears, be glad most parents don't do this today. Boxing ears would be, back in the day, they would let teachers and adults, parents would do this. They do it really hard on your ears, when you weren't doing what you should or paying attention. And so she was doing that to herself because she's playing a game with herself, and she cheated against herself somehow. Interesting thought, because obviously you would know that that's happening, but interesting way to use your imagination. Soon her eye fell on the little glass box that had been lying under the table. She opened it and found in it a very small cake. Oh, y'all know this part. On which the words "Eat me" were beautifully. Well, let me get to the right bit. Hold on, I gotta find the camera. Let's see. Kind of hard to see from this, and it's backwards, obviously, but still. Were beautifully marked in currants. Currants. I think they mean like currants, like the grape kind of thing. They're kind of like grapes. Let me see what the exact thing is. Let's see. They're small round fruits that grow in bunches on bushes. They taste tangy and sweet, and people use them in jams, juices, cakes. They look a little like tiny grapes, but they're a different kind of fruit. And then also I wanted to say, because she uses this a lot, and a lot of fancy people and people back in the day would use this a lot. Alas is a word people use when they feel sad, disappointed, or regretful. It's kind of like saying, oh no, or what a pity. Like, oh man, it stinks that this happened. That's what alas means. Yeah, I was going to do that, but kind of stinks that the store wasn't open, so I couldn't get it. Or something like that. Okay. Like, it kind of stinks that didn't work out for you. Well, I'll eat it, said Alice. And if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key. And if it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care which happens. She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, which way? Which way? Like she's trying to figure out, am I going up or down or nothing? And she was which way it was growing, and she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, this is what generally happens when one eats cake, but Alice had got so much in the way of expecting nothing but out-of-the-way things to happen that it seemed quite dull and stupid for life to go on the common way. Yeah, you're like, man, I was actually starting to have some fun. Man. So she set to work and very soon finished the cake. And also notice, she didn't check it for poison. She's just eating her own thing. You know, things. And those of you who have allergies, you know. You have to check. That thing could have peanuts, it could have this, it could have that. Or someone could have just put something in it. Like if Tom and Jerry, sometimes they leave things for each other to be like, ooh. Watch what happens. He thinks he's going to eat my food, but watch what he's going to do. And then he'll never eat my food again. And there she is. Just sitting there eating it. And on chapter 2, we will get into the Pool of Tears. So sorry about the glitches with my setup, and again for it being a little clunky, but as my students know, that tends to be me. As Debbie Reynolds put it in Halloween Town, that man would lose his head if his wife didn't put it in his lunchbox. That would be me about my whole life. If it wasn't attached, I'd walk away without it. Anyway, from one rainbow teacher. And watch out, you never know who's behind you giving you the bunny ears. Hope you've had a good Bald is Beautiful day. For those cats and humans who have less hair. And again, you never know if I might be behind you bunny earing you. But if you have a bunny or somebody else, or somebody bunny ears you, remember, you can always ask. Please don't do that. And if you're serious about it and you're going, stop it. And they keep going, they are leaning into bullying. Because if somebody tells you, oh, it's just a joke, you stop being a baby. No. It's called a boundary, and you're allowed to have it. And if they're not getting it, talk to somebody else who can help you deal with it and get the picture through to them. An adult, if you are not one already, or a fellow adult, if you are. Again, have a great positive thinking day.